Hi everyone, welcome back to Horse Patterns. Today, I'm excited to bring on a guest, Matthias, a developer who's been exploring better ways to handle validation. He's going to walk us through the notification pattern and show how it can help make your code cleaner and more user-friendly. So with that, I'll hand it over to Matthias.
Thanks for the intro. Hey everyone, really glad to be here with you. Today, we're diving into a design pattern that can greatly improve the way we handle validation in our applications, making your code more robust and easier to maintain by replacing exceptions with the notification pattern. By the end of this video, you'll understand what the notification pattern is, how it improves validation logic, why it's better than immediately throwing exceptions, and how to implement it in your own projects. So what is the notification pattern? The notification pattern is a way to collect all validation errors into a notification object, instead of immediately throwing exceptions when the first validation fails. This allows you to gather all validation errors at once, provide comprehensive feedback to users, and keep your codebase clean and maintainable. Now, why use the notification pattern? Let's say we're building a weightlifting competition system. We need to check whether all of the athlete's information is valid. Only then can we say we have a valid athlete. A bad approach would be validating each characteristic of the object distinctly. This would make our application stop on the first invalid property instead of validating our object as a whole. To better understand what we are talking about, let's see some code samples. First, let's have a look at what we are trying to avoid. Traditionally, when validating data, developers often throw exceptions upon encountering errors. For instance, in Java, you might see code like this. While this constructor works, it has its drawbacks. If the personal data object has invalid data, we will never know whether we had a valid athlete ID or not, because regardless of its value, this code will never reach the validation of this field. Therefore, this validation approach stops at the first error it encounters and may not provide a comprehensive list of all validation issues when creating an athlete instance. This is where the notification pattern comes in. Instead of throwing exceptions, we collect validation errors in a notification object, allowing us to gather all issues before taking action. In order to implement the notification pattern, we need to perform the following actions. Splitting the check method, separate the validation logic from the action logic. Building a notification class, create a class to collect error messages. Refactoring validation methods. Modify validation methods to add errors to the notification instead of throwing exceptions. Handling multiple errors. Ensure that all validation errors are captured, not just the first one encountered. Let's see what this looks like in the following code sample. As we can see, this class has one constructor which receives a class. This is used to instantiate our domain violation exception. This class will be responsible for storing our violations. We can use the validate and set method to check whether the fields in our object are valid. Here we give the field name, the object to be validated, and the validation we want to apply. After doing all the business validations, we can call the validate domain object, which will throw our domain violation exception in case any violations were added to our domain violation exception. We can also see an enum that implements some of the most common validation scenarios, not null and not blank. Here we implement the domain validation interface for each of our enum values. By using an interface as the expected object, we can have more complex validation rules implemented, and the domain exception notification doesn't need to worry about implementation details. Here we have a more complex validation for emails that rely on a regex. We can simply pass this class to our validate and set method, and it will work by calling the implemented interface methods. Now let's have a look at our athlete class again, but now using the domain exception notification class to validate our fields. In our domain objects, every time we want to instantiate a new object, we can also instantiate a new domain exception notification object as the first statement in our constructor. Then for each field we want to validate, we can call the validate and set method, specifying which validation rule should be applied. After we are done with setting all the fields, we can call the validate domain object method if any violation of our business rules occurred. An exception will be thrown with the entire list of violations. In the personal data and contacts classes, we applied the same logic to the constructors. In these classes, there are some fields that do not require any validation, so we can simply set those fields, as there is no need to call the validate and set method. Here we have some tests to make sure our exceptions have collected all the violations we were expecting. Since all fields follow our business rules, the object is created as expected and no exception is thrown. In this test, we are violating both the rules for the contact and name fields, which cannot be null and blank respectively. Therefore, an exception will be throw containing 2 violations. To sum up, replacing exceptions with a notification object during validation allows us to handle multiple errors gracefully and provides a better user experience. Thanks for sticking with me. I hope this gave you some useful ideas for writing cleaner, more effective validation logic. That's all from me for now. Handing it back to you.
Big thanks to Matius for sharing that clear breakdown of the notification pattern. It's a super handy approach for improving validation in your code. Let me know in the comments if you've used this pattern in your projects, or if you're planning to give it a try. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more awesome software design content. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.